Hi, today we'll take a look at the IPMAT 2019 VARC section. The first question is reading comprehension. Read the following passage and choose the answer that is closest to each of the questions that are based on the passage. Supposing half a dozen or a dozen men were cast ashore from a wreck on an uninhabited island and left to their own resources, one, of course, according to his capacity, would be said to one business and one to another, the strongest to dig and to cut wood and to build huts for the rest, the most dexterous to make shoes out of bark and coats out of skins, the best educated to look for iron or lead in the rocks, and to plan the channels for the irrigation of the fields. So everybody will be given a job according to their own capacity, right? But though their labors were thus naturally severed, that small group of shipwrecked men would understand well enough that the speediest progress was to be made by helping each other, not by opposing each other, and they would know that this help could only be properly given so long as they were frank and open in their relationships. Frank and open in their relations. So they could help only if this happened, right? And they were given jobs according to their capacity. Okay. And the difficulties which each lay under properly explained to the rest, so that any appearance of secrecy or separateness in the actions of any one of them would instantly and justly be looked upon with suspicion by the rest. Would instantly and justly be looked upon with suspicion. Secrecy or separateness. तो अभी तक हमने देखा कि सबको अपनी कैपेसिटी के हिसाब से काम मिल रहा है, ठीक है, और ये एक्सपेक्ट किया जा रहा है कि अगर आपको हेल्प चाहिए, कोऑपरेशन चाहिए, तो आपको ओपन होना पड़ेगा अपने रिलेशनशिप्स में. Appearance of secrecy or separateness would instantly be looked upon by suspicion as the sign of some selfish or foolish proceeding on the part of the individual. अगर आप कुछ secretive behave करेंगे तो लोग आपसे अलग से बात करने लगेंगे, suspicious हो जाएंगे आपको लेके. If, for instance, the scientific man were found to have gone out at night, unknown to the rest, to alter the sluices, the others would think, and in all probability rightly think, that he wanted to get the best supply of water to his own field. And if the shoemaker refused to show them where the bark grew, which he made the sandals of, they would naturally think, and in all probability rightly think, that he didn't want them to see how much there was of it, and that he meant to ask them for more corn and potatoes in exchange for his sandals than the trouble of making them deserved. The trouble of making them deserved. So rather than getting them deserved, वो scarce कर देगा उनको, ठीक है? This is just an example of secrecy or separateness. And thus, although each man would have a portion of time to himself in which he was allowed to do what he chose without let or inquiry, so long as he was working in that particular business which he had undertaken for the common benefit, any secrecy on his part would be immediately supposed to mean mischief and would require to be accounted for or put an end to, and all this the more because whatever the work might be, certainly there would be difficulties about it which, when once they were all well explained, might be more or less done away with by the help of the rest, so that assuredly every one of them would advance with his labor, not only more happily, but more profitably and quickly, by having no secrets and by frankly bestowing and frankly receiving such help as lay in his way to get or to give. So if I talk about the crux of the passage, it gives you an example of people who are shipwrecked, and they are assigned, roles depending on their capacities or their abilities. But it also goes on to tell us that if they show secrecy or if they show separateness, or they will be looked upon by suspicion, and that would not take a long time. It would happen instantly and justly so, right? So all in all, we're saying to receive, you have to work in a co-op. You have to work cooperatively rather, and to cooperate, you need. Just to receive cooperation, you have to be open with the other person as well. That's the main idea of the passage. Let's take a look at the questions. When a dozen men are cast away on an imaginary island, the best educated would look for metals in the rocks because that was their ability, right? Metals can be used to make weapons? Not really. Such an island probably has unexploited resources. Maybe, maybe not. But the question is, the best educated will look for metals. ऐसा क्यों? Why would they do so? He may find it beneath him to dig or cut to make shoes. मतलब आप बोल रहे हो कि उसको he would feel उसकी क्लास का नहीं है वो. He is suited for such work. That's the best answer. Option D. The author states that any appearance of secrecy or separateness would instantly and justly be looked upon with suspicion. From this statement, we may infer that what is secret is not what is separate. No, not really. Secrecy is not exactly the same as separateness. That is quite the contrary of what the author is saying. It is natural to be suspicious of secrecy. Yes, it is, but instantly and justly. So what we're saying is, it only takes an instant for a relationship to deteriorate. Option D. The instance of the shoemaker who refuses to show his source and asks for more corn and potatoes is an example of, I think this is a very simple answer, strong bargain, unfair practice, the system of barter, the intent to make trouble, clearly unfair practice. According to the author, whatever one's work might be, hardships are going to be a part of it. Yes, okay. One cannot keep complaining, all right. One should expect others to assure of help and advance our labors. No. One must offer help to others in order to receive help. That's what we said. That's the main idea of the passage. See, it goes towards the end of the passage. It says, the last line of the passage talks about exactly this. Be honest and be willing to help others in case you want help from them, right? The author's belief is that for progress to happen, a team should consist of people with multiple talents. Okay, yes, that is helpful, but that is not what the author is saying, right? Cooperation among team members is essential. Yes, that's the idea. One must deal with those who are secretive. Not quite. Transparency among all concerned is mandatory. Okay, so you may be confused between this and this. Now, cooperation and the team members is essential, but you will get cooperation if and only if you are transparent, right? So, I would go with D, which is most important. Transparency among all concerned is mandatory. The writer makes a hypothesis which can be related to, I think this is a hypothesis which can be related to communities in general, not just a one section. A primitive and unsophisticated world, not really. An ideal world of talented people, no. An imaginary island rich with resources, see, that is an example, okay? But the idea is cooperation. Cooperation kahan ho sakta hai? Communities in general. Again, I would expect you to read this, pause the video and read this. I'll get on with it. The perennial debate over gender differences threatens to remain inconclusive. Stereotypes pertaining to male superiority and female submissiveness could be traced to earlier ages where assigned roles were needed as survival measures. But can we today see a swing away from these stereotypes? Or have they established a stranglehold on our perceptions? In this gendered world, we continue to live with notions that one's gender determines one's skills and preferences, from toys and colors to career choices. So the girl child will be presented with a Barbie doll while the boy child will receive a Lego set. Does that mean that our brains are different? This myth has been exploded by a British professor of cognitive neuroimagining. Her research attempts to establish how these stereotypes mold our ideas of ourselves. She examines how science has been misinterpreted or misused to ask the wrong questions. Science has been misinterpreted and misused, wrong questions. Instead of challenging the status quo, she urges us to move beyond a binary view of people's brains and instead to see these as highly individualized, profoundly adaptable, and full of unbounded potential. Her conclusive findings establish that no brain differences can be found that are solely gender related. No brain differences which are solely gender related. In other words, modern neuroscientists have identified no decisive category defining differences between the brains of men and women. So we're saying the brains of men and women are alike. As a result of these findings, we owe it to ourselves to dump the myths and look at ourselves afresh. We need to recognize that the male and female brain debate is a distraction besides being based on inaccuracies. It is possibly harmful too, because it can be used as a hook to justify saying that there is no point in girls doing science because they do not have a science brain, or compelling boys to opt for a science because their brains are shaped for that subject. right? It can also condemn boys for being emotional, as this is seen as a feminine trait, and most dangerous of all, to proclaim that boys, not girls, are meant to lead. So basically, the passage talks about how society, renders the brains of girls and boys. Okay, earlier it was a trait; it was required for survival skills, but nowadays you give a Barbie to a child, to a girl child, and a Lego set to a boy child, and then it's not that the brains are different; it's just that they've molded that way. Okay, and there's a new research which has come out. The researcher, the scientist, of professor of neuroimagining, she's come up with a new perspective, and she's challenging the status quo. That's the basic crux of the passage. The research of a British professor of cognitive neuroimagining has succeeded in establishing that the brains of men and women are alike. We did speak about it. Yes, that's what she's trying to prove. Science needs to challenge the status quo. That's not what she's talking about. Society must break away from attempts at stereotyping gender issues. That's a very strong statement to make. The potential of a human brain is not directly linked to gender. So clearly, the answer is D. Brains of men and women are alike, but the professor is trying to establish that the potential of human brain is not directly linked to gender. Okay? By referring to the world as gendered, the writer wants to convey that gender differences can be detected right from childhood. No. Society continues to be fixated on gender stereotypes. I think I can go with this. Once gender is bound to determine one's abilities, the debate on gender differences will never be resolved. Too far-fetched. Never be resolved is too strong. Is bound to determine one's abilities. That's quite the opposite of the fabric of the passage. Option B is correct here. One of the dangers in adopting a binary view of the human brain is that it can promote the notion of feminine and masculine traits. Exactly. When you adopt a binary view, just like I gave you an example, girl child gets a Barbie while a male child gets a Lego. This promotes the notion of feminine and masculine traits. A looks good. Determine as well as limit academic choices, guys. That's too far-fetched. That is one point which is made, but that's not the crux of the passage. Lead to the distortion and misinterpretation of scientific data. No. Be used to encourage male dominance and superiority. Not really. Dangers in adopting a binary view is that it promotes the notion of feminine and masculine traits. The writer of this passage wants to emphasize the need to use new insights, yes, new insights, provided by scientific research for a better understanding of human abilities. She's trying to challenge the status quo, she's trying to understand that human capability is better, and she's trying to emphasize on the fact that we develop the differences between gender, they're not inborn. A looks good. B says continuously debate issues of gender differences. No, she's not debating issues of gender differences, she's proving them. Question the findings of a scientific inquiry into the functioning of the human brain. She's not questioning anything. Accept gender differences as essential to the survival of human species. Not really. Quite the opposite. Hence, A. The synonym for stranglehold is asphyxiation is when you when you smother someone. Containment is not that strong. Prohibiting entry is not strong. Overwhelming control, which is a strong word for stranglehold. The antonym or the opposite of unbounded. Unbounded would be, opposite of unbounded would be bounded or restricted. The next set of questions. Complete the following sentences by choosing the most appropriate phrase from the options given below. Alright? So you have to choose one of these phrases. Although he's recovering from his illness, he has to follow certain diet restrictions. He cannot eat junk food. Please do not pity him and cut down the snacks. No, be slack with his eating. Be slack with his eating would mean that you don't pay attention. Cut him some slack is that you go a little bit lenient with him, which is not the right answer because you're not talking about being lenient. Give him some snack. Literal meaning of the word. Cut him some slack is be less critical of him, right? That's why I'm not choosing B. Similar question. The problems may be difficult, but all you have to do is dash as long as you can. Hang in up there makes no sense. Hang on there is nothing. Hang on to that literally means to hold on to something. Hang in there is to not give up, is to keep moving forward or keep struggling. So D makes the best sense. The standards set by the examination board are so high that it would be difficult for poorly prepared students to pass most errors, not really, pass muster. So you see, passed muster, that's the incorrect usage. Get past most errors, no. Pass muster. Pass muster as an idiom means to produce a satisfactory result, right? And that's why it fits in the best. Another similar question. After all the alliances and arithmetic, the party is likely to dash a majority in the assembly legislation. Okay, so scrape through a majority. Scrape through is to barely get through something, okay? Scrape together will make sense. Tape together is literally meaning to put together with tape. Shape together is to build something. Scrape together makes more sense. Scrape through is to barely make through something. Scrape together is to bring together. I'll have similar question again. I'll have to dash because I don't know how Sheila's parents are going to react to this offer. If you don't know how they're going to react, you will have to be spontaneous. You will have to think on your feet. You'll have to think on the spot. And the right idiom for it is play it by ear, which means go without any preparation. Count on my fingers, face the music. Face the music is when you do something wrong and you have to face criticism for it, right? That would not make sense because we don't know whether Sheila's parents will be scolding this person or not. Break the ice. Break the ice means to start a conversation, okay? Now, he doesn't know how Sheila's parents are going to react, so he cannot go with a plan. He'll have to work without a plan, hence played by the ear. If you had been more alert, this golden opportunity would not have escaped your fingers, no. Slipped off, no. Scraped away, no. Slipped through your fingers. Slipped through your fingers means that you have something, you already have it, but you don't make the best of it, you don't grab the opportunity, and it goes a waste. Let's look at the next set of questions. In each of the following sentences, the incorrect part of the sentence is underlined. Choose an alternative form, the four given options, so that the sentence is rendered correct. So you have to correct the underlined part. The place where her father disappeared and the reason why he did are unknown to her. Guys, the moment I say reason, this why becomes redundant. Reason automatically talks about why. So A will not be the right answer. B looks good because I need where her father disappeared and the reason, that's it. I don't have a where here. So C is also incorrect. And same problem, reason why. I don't need reason why, okay? This is incorrect, this is incorrect. This misses out on where, hence B is the right answer. Which team has the best record, yours or theirs? So guys, we talk about degrees of comparison, okay? We have 3 degrees of comparison, like tall, taller, tallest. We have positive, comparative and superlative. So when we're talking about one thing, we use the positive degree, he is tall. When we're talking about two things, we use the comparative degree, he is taller than me, he is taller than I rather, right? And third sentence would be, he is the tallest in the class, when we're talking about more than 2. Here we're talking about 1 and 2. So I have to use the comparative degree. Comparative is here and here. This is a little odd. Which one team has the better record? Simply, which team has the better record? After sensing a problem with the factory workers, the personnel officer demanded to know who the unit leaders had contacted to conduct the petition drive. Two things here, okay? First, personnel officer demanded to know who the leaders had contacted. This is a classic case. This is a classic case of past perfect tense. The next question. After sensing a problem with the factory workers, the personnel officer demanded to know who the union leaders had contacted to conduct the petition drive. This is a classic case of past perfect tense. We use past perfect tense to denote order of two things which have happened in the past. The first takes simple past and the second takes past perfect. First thing that happened was union leaders had contacted. So this is in place. The second thing, demanded. You see, this is past perfect and this is simple past. Also, the subject here is the leaders. The leaders contacted. So whatever is left is the object, and we use whom in the objective case, not who. C is wrong because it talks about present perfect tense. I have whom, I have past perfect tense, hence A. His wrongdoing was completely exposed, but not once he apologized for his action. Guys, we already know when we're talking about a negative sentence, the subject goes later on. Not once did he apologize. I need the helping verb first and the subject after it because it's a negative sentence. The municipal council can no longer wash its hands of its responsibilities. Guys, when I say the municipal council, I agree that this is one council we're talking about, but there will be multiple people in the council, right? So the council will not have one hand, they will have multiple hands, the council members per se. So first things first, wash their hands of their responsibilities, hence B. C is incorrect because of the incorrect usage of OF. The letter states that no one can avail the service offered by the company till June 2029. Guys, the service offered by is incorrect. It has to be the service on offer. Clearly B. Also, it says on offer from. From is incorrect. It has to be service on offer by. Next, we have each of the paragraphs given below has a sentence missing, which is indicated by a blank. From the choices given below each paragraph, choose the sentence that seems most logically appropriate to complete the paragraph. So basically, para completion. Okay. There's a dash first. Infrastructure in the form of paved surfaces disrupts water absorption and lowers water retention. So we know it has to something do with water. This leads to disastrous levels of flooding, which diminish the biodiversity, impoverish the people of the region. Again, flooding. Land should be used mindfully to prevent waterlogging during heavy rains. So I know this has to do something around with water. D says water retention is less important to prevent flooding. We can't say water retention less important to prevent flooding because we say lowers water retention. If water retention were less important, we would not have to mention this. C says infrastructure can actually cause a lot of trouble during flooding. There is no mention of infrastructure. Although we say in the form of disrupts water absorption and lowered water retention, but we are saying infrastructure cause a lot of trouble during flooding. This is misleading. Flooding can happen after heavy rainfall, heavy or low rainfall. So guys, we can't just switch from flooding to infrastructure. So we're saying infrastructure is one problem, right? Climate change is not the only cause, infrastructure also is a cause. So A is the best statement here. Few look forward to old age and all that it brings in its wake: a deteriorating health, loss of vigor, restricted mobility, increasing dependence on others, not to mention a sense of foreboding and anxiety. Yet, one has to learn to cope with the onset of old age. So we're talking about the negatives it brings, and then we're saying yet. So there is a contrast indicator. Learn to cope with the onset of old age. Firstly, it is imperative to prepare to accept old age in spite of the restrictions or limitations it imposes on one's mobility. So we're saying you learn to embrace it. Equally important is the need to adopt a positive attitude towards life. So what we can do to, embrace it. Then there's a dash and says, above all, peace of mind is the efficacious balm that brings equanimity to one's life. So we're all in all basically saying how to embrace old age, something on those lines. A says the role of humor and fun are indispensable, and these are the spice of life and guaranteed to bring cheer and bonhomie, besides keeping one's mind off life's grim realities. Grim reality would be that of aging. A looks good. B says, owing to advances in medical science, we can now expect to live well beyond 90 years. This is absolutely out of context. There is no mention of medical science and there is no mention of living beyond 90 years. Because if you say it after the blank, this says, above all, peace of mind is what we need. Physical debility and stiffening body joints, creaking in protest make mobility difficult. This again is out of context. It does not fit in because here we're talking about need to adopt a positive attitude and then we're saying peace of mind. Mobility will not fit in the middle. Turning nostalgic and recalling those good old days when they were young and life was radically different what it is today help one accept old age. Again, this is out of context. Okay, we're saying the things that we can do. The role of humor and fun are indispensable, hence is the best answer. Okay. The Arab Spring is widely believed to have stemmed from dissatisfaction with the rule of local governments, though some have speculated that wide gaps in income level may have had a hand as well. Stemmed from dissatisfaction, income levels may have had a hand as well. Issues such as political corruption, human right violation, unemployment, education, and educated but dissatisfied youth may have been responsible. So we're talking about the causes of the Arab Spring. A says the youth unrest was the main reason for the Arab Spring. We can't conclude that because we're saying this is just one of the causes. Some also cite the 2009-10 Iranian election protests as one of the reasons behind the Arab Springs. So among all these reasons, this is one more reason. So B could be a good answer. C says the Arab Spring was due to the wide gap between the haves and have-nots. This is very relative. Haves and have-nots does not give you a very clear picture. To sum up, the Arab Spring was a series of anti-government protests, uprisings. Guys, okay, this is what Arab Spring would have been. But when I say to sum up, I'm not summing up anything. I'm only talking about the causes of the Arab Spring. So, B is the best answer here. One who is dash gets on with his job in spite of obstacles, while the one who is dash hardly shows any progress. Guys, in the first blank, I can have either assiduous or hardworking. Then you have querulous and dishonest. Querulous is somebody who is always complaining. Now, out of somebody who's dishonest and querulous, which one is more likely to not show any progress? I'd go with querulous. Also, the latter spends all his time whining about his troubles. So, querulous person whines about his troubles. These two are also connected. Hence, B is the best answer. Next, the dash of multiculturalism in times of war or economic dash, tribalism, okay, is what causes those in power to confine groups of people with different dash into ghettos or in communes on the margins of the cities. I think it's a very, very easy giveaway from this very blank. People with different dash into ghettos or in communes. Ghettos is where all the people live together, all the people of one caste or one race, right? They're very famous in US. A lot of colored people live in ghettos there. Or in communes on the margins of their cities. So I think the last blank takes ethnicities. Also, if I take the first one, the opposite of multiculturalism in times of war or economic distress is tribalism. Tribalism and multiculturalism are absolutely opposites. Tribalism is people of one tribe living together. Multiculturalism is multiple people living together. So clearly, D is the best answer. The next question, that the artist went about what systematically to get traditional dash back into the mainstream dash and a textile culture for dance is to be celebrated. Okay, over here, we can have either practices or motifs. Motifs basically mean patterns, right? So in the first blank, these two can fit in. The mainstream processed and a textile culture for dance is to be celebrated. Mainstream processed will not make sense. It has to be mainstream created. B is the best answer. In response to my friend's request, I decided to write her a letter, which I hope would be honest and practical while also serving as a dash of sorts for my own feminist thinking. This book is a dash of that letter with some detail that changed. So guys, this book, I can't say this book is a fallout of that letters. We can't say this book is a précis of that letters. Précis is an abstract form of writing. A book can also not be a version. Oh, it can be a version, sorry. It cannot be a form, right? Also, it says, while serving as a map of sorts for my own feminist thinking. So it gives an idea about how the author is thinking here. Map and version, best answer here. Okay, so guys, mind you, there is a blank here as well. That's why there are 3 words given. Quantum physics really begins to point to this discovery. It says that you can't have a universe without mind dash into it. See, intruding will be wrong. You can't intrude. Penetrating will also be wrong. Getting and entering, I could go with these two. And that the mind is actually dash the very thing that is being dash. So again, the very thing that is being acknowledged, we are not acknowledging it, right? We're talking about a universe. We don't acknowledge the universe, we imagine it, or we have a perspective towards it. So we are perceiving it. Hence, C is the best answer. Without mind entering into it, and the mind is actually shaping the very thing that is being perceived. That also gives us a main idea of the passage. Next, we have incorrect usage. One of the statements below contains a word used incorrectly. Choose the option which has the incorrect or appropriate usage of the word. Okay. The emperor ordered the arrest of his most vocal critic. Critic is fine here. There are very few film critics left in our city. Okay, so we're probably talking about critics, yes. Mahatma Gandhi's critic of the West remains relevant to this day. Guys, we're talking about this critique here. Critique or analysis. The spelling of this critic is incorrect. His classmates warned him it is not a good idea to critique our principle, to analyze our principles. Yes, so C is the incorrect usage. This critique should have been used here instead. The river teemed with salmon and trout. The wedding was teamed in Bhojpuri style. Which team will win this year's IPL tournament? So this is alright. This is alright. The film star wore a purple suit teamed with a crimson tie. That's alright. Guys, it is in all probability not teamed, but themed. Okay. Last week we learned about the right way to greet our customers. Okay. Get it right the first time is an often heard management slogan. Guys, clearly this is incorrect. Get it correct in the first time, not right as in writing. In India, driving on the right side of the road is wrong. Yes. The right of an afternoon tea is described in many of Enid Blyton's book. Right basically refers to a custom. The attackers decided to raise the castle to the ground. Guys, you can't raise the castle to the ground. The correct usage would be raise. Raise means to demolish. Okay. They raised their children to be free-thinking boys and girls. Fine. To raise a toast to a newlywed couple is a common practice. Also fine. The rays of the sun rose above the mountain. Also correct. Shakespeare is sometimes referred to as a bard. Bard is actually a poet. So that's alright. He barred his soul to the preacher. Barred is when you're devoid of something. But over here we're saying he showed his soul to the preacher. So in all probabilities, this should be bared, not barred. Because of his age, he was barred from entering the house. Banned. The bar barred all bards. The bar banned all poets. So as far as the answers are concerned, this is the answer. This is the answer. This is the answer. And this is the answer. Alright, let's take a look at the next set of questions. The sentences given below, when properly sequenced, form a coherent paragraph. Each sentence is labeled with a number. Decide on the most logical order and enter the sequence of numbers in the space provided. So basically, para-jumbles. Here, I would request you to pause the video so that you can go through the statements. I'll directly move on to the explanation. Opening statement is second. Sorry. The hunter-gatherer went from place to place in search of food. Okay, this happened first. This was followed by an attempt to grow food by the scattering the spare grains. Okay, now he scattered the spare grains. Out of the spare grains, he just harvested the wild grains after the scattering. 2 for 1. Sorry. And then last is third, as the crops began to give better yields, this reduced his need to go in search of animals and wild plants. Next one. Again, I recommend that you pause it. Sorry. The first sentence. Life in a rural Kashmiri village seems idyllic to Shalini at first. So we're saying idyllic, it's perfect. As she's befriending lovely people and admiring majestic natural scenery, especially in contrast to the cacophony of urban Mumbai. Alright. 3 starts the sentence. Soon, however, she notices. And also, however. So there is a contrast indicator, however. So from positive, we're probably shifting to a negative tone. She notices the lack of access to medical care or education. So 3, 2. Followed by, people here are 1 injury away from starvation, 1 spoken word away from detainment or death. Between 1 and 4, 4 will be the last statement because we have moreover, which means in addition to. So 3, 2, 1 and 4. The first sentence here, it would be, incredible as it may sound, we are now told that democracy is just as good for the soul, it is good for the body too. I'll leave it elsewhere. Okay. Then, one says, the study published in Lancet recently. Which study? The one mentioned in 5. So, 5 and 1 is a mandatory pair. Clearly, 2, 5, 1. Also, 5 talks about strong correlation between health and the most famous form of government, which is democracy. So, democracy here. Right? 2, 5, 1 will be, of course, the study. So, 5, 1. Then we have, the study suggests that elections and health of the people are increasingly separable. Also, we are talking about the study. So, clearly, 5, 1, 4 is a mandatory pair. And last, 3, without pressure from voters. 3 is more of an explanation as to why good health is related to democracy. That brings us to the end. Thank you very much for watching it. I'll see you soon.